Welcome. Here's your official welcome. It's so awesome to see all you students out there. We are so excited, and you are in for a treat because today is our second virtual visit from artist and author and illustrator extraordinaire. Today it's Jarrett Lerner. Um, I do want to say that this is a brand new project for us. We've done the Young Writers Contest for a while. And just to remind everybody out there, all you artists and writers, be ready to submit some of your work because you have until April 15th to submit an illustrated story, a short story, a poem, or a graphic novel. Actually, if you wanted, you could submit one thing in all of those categories, but just one per category. Okay, so start thinking about that if you haven't already. I hope you're all started. We're ready to read your writing and see your work. Today, we're going to hear from Jarrett Lerner. We've got Jarrett's bio up for you, but just a couple of quick points about Jarrett. He is an author, an illustrator, a creativity guru in my mind, and he is the creator of the Engineered series of middle grade novels. He writes chapter books, series, and also activity books. And I'm emphasizing this because one of those activity books, we have got 30 copies of Give This Book a Title by Jarrett that we're going to be giving away to lots of you. So we're giving away so many copies that we will have to contact you by email to let you know that you've won. So please, teachers, keep an eye on that email for the freebies. Jarrett is also working on an illustrated novel in verse, which sounds really cool to me, Jarrett. I'd love to hear more about that. And it's also a forthcoming set of early readers. All his work is published by Simon & Schuster. I think that's helpful for the teachers to know. And something I'm really interested in too, I wish we had more time to chat, just the two of us, Jarrett. He co-founded and co-organizes the Kids Need Books and Kids Need Mentors projects, which sounds like a great way to spend your time. So I'm going to stop talking now, and we're going to let Jarrett get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Lynn, and thank you all for having me. And I'm excited to be here. I think this contest is so awesome, and I wish I had something like it as a kid. And I just think it's so cool that there's a category for graphic novels and illustrated stories as opposed to just prose stories and verse and poetry. I create in all of those areas, and I never know what sort of shape my books, my stories are going to take until I start working on them. So it's cool to me that this contest sort of allows you that freedom and opportunity to try all those different things. So what I was going to do today is talk to you specifically. I'm here to talk about the graphic novel and comic area of that. And so what I thought I would do is sort of show you how I approach this stuff and hopefully give you a couple of tools and techniques to make you feel even more confident and capable of creating your I'm going to spotlight myself. There you go. Hopefully, what I have to show you gives you more confidence in your abilities to create some comics and graphic novels, and some tips for telling your stories with that language, because comics and graphic novels use the language of comics, which is sort of like a language all its own, which incorporates words and pictures. Just briefly, I've got a lot of books, as you heard, but if you're interested in comics and graphic novels in particular, I'm just going to show you those books of mine that you might want to check out if you like what I share here. Give This Book a Title is the one that you've got some copies that'll be given away. It's got a companion volume, Give This Book a Cover, with even more activities. And in these books, I teach you how to draw certain things, And by teaching you how to draw certain things in a certain way, using certain steps and approaches, I hope to teach you how to draw, to figure out how to draw for yourself anything and everything you can imagine. I also give you all sorts of prompts, open-ended prompts to give you ideas for stories or comics or just drawings, just thought experiments. And then these, Finish This Comics, are comics. There's a whole bunch of them that I have started and that I ask you to finish. Truly, and I'm going to talk about this later, the best way to learn how to make comics and to get better about making comics is just to start making comics. But it can be very difficult to look at a blank page and say, okay, I'm going to make a comic. Where do I start? What do I do? So by giving you the beginning of a comic and sort of giving your imagination some tools to work with, by sort of like putting you in a sandbox instead of turning you out into the wilds of a big, scary, endless wilderness, by sort of putting you in a sandbox with certain tools, certain toys to play with, you can create much more easily and start learning a lot more. So that's why I use Finish This Comics. You can also get tons of free activities in addition to those at my website. I think it looks like maybe Amy just even linked to it, so you have it handy. And then my first graphic novel came out last year, The Hungry Heroes Missed Meal Mayhem. So if you want a taste of how I actually make longer form comics for a whole graphic novel, you can check this book out. The sequel, Snack Cabinet Sabotage, will be out in August. So that's a bit about my work relating to comics. Now, what I want to do is spotlight my desk. Let's see. I'm going to replace that. I'm going to remove this one because you don't need to see me. You're going to want to see what I'm drawing. It's much more interesting than my face. So here's just some paper and a Sharpie. I don't use, when I create my final art for my books, I use some digital tools. But when I'm just drawing and sketching and doodling, I normally just use a marker, maybe a pen, and some printer paper. You don't need anything too fancy. And what I want to do for the next 10 or so minutes, and then I'm going to get to your questions. I think Amy prompted you to ask some questions, so go ahead and do that if you have any or if you come up with any. But what I want to do is just talk to you about how I approach comics and how I make comics and how I practice making comics. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of talk to you for a second about how comics work. So if you look at a page and you see these two boxes, you are looking at a comic, and this would be called a two-panel comic. Maybe you already know this, but this could just be a quick review. These boxes are panels. Panels can be any shape. They can be circular. You could have a star-shaped panel if you meant to. You can have rectangles. You can have sort of like something almost like, I've seen some people who will panel a page almost like this, where it's like, I don't know, maybe like a single drawing and then all these things coming out of it. You can do whatever you want. Panels can also be implied, meaning that if you have a page of a comic, you can just make your drawings and end them, make them have borders. So there's not an actual line, but you can tell they're distinct drawings. And you read panels from left to right and top to bottom. And that's what people tend to focus on when they look at comics. What's going on in these boxes? And that definitely is an important part of it. But I want to start to train you and encourage you to think about also the invisible space between panels. And this invisible space is called the gutter. Just like the thing that you have on the edges of your roof, probably, to catch the water and put it all in one spot and then put it down a downspout and shove it out into the street or whatever. A gutter And the gutter is where the real magic of comics happens. It's where the reader gets involved in the comic and where the real awesomeness and magic starts to happen. So let me explain how this works. Every panel shows you a moment in time. Say it's a character saying something. Every panel shows you one distinct moment in time. The gutter is about time passing. And it's up to the creator of the comics. It's up to the comic maker to decide how much time passes and what has changed. And the reader fills in this gap. And that's where the reader gets involved, and that's when exciting stuff happens. So as the creator of a comic, you have to decide how much time has passed and what is going to change. So time passing and something changing. I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to draw this character again. Here they are looking sad, right? Here they are looking happy. 1, 2, a 2-panel comic, right? Something has changed from one panel to the next, meaning it's a comic. It's using the language of comics by showing one thing happening and something changing over time. But how much time has passed? Think about it. Ask yourself, how much time has passed here? Would everyone have the same answer? Would some people maybe have a different answer? This could be 1 second that has passed. It could be 20 seconds. It could be 20 minutes. It could be 2 hours. It could be a year, right? We don't know how much time has passed, and we don't know what has caused this change to happen. Let me show you another example using 3 panels. One, two, three, left to right, right? So this is a complete comic too. Something is changing. And if I ask you how much time has passed, you would probably be able to tell much more easily, much more clearly how much time has passed. The sun is rising. It's high in the sky, right? That's noon. And now it's setting. So this is a day. A day has passed. That is a clear comic. We know that, I don't know, 6 hours has passed. 6 hours has passed. That's a clear comic. It's showing you changes in each panel and how much time has passed. Let me show you one more. I'm going to stretch this out of the frame. So here you have a little tiny little twig, and here you have a big tree. How much time has passed here? A lot more than 6 hours, right? Years. Like I said earlier, the key of making comics is figuring out how much time you want to pass between your panels and what is going to change. So this is a great way to tell you that a year has passed. If I had made this transformation, if I instead had used you know, a whole page of panels to show you this tree getting bigger bit by bit, that's going to be a pretty boring comic, right? It would take pages and pages and pages to show you this thing growing. If my interval of time here in the gutter was only like, 1 month instead of 1 decade. So I'm going to show you one more thing, but I just want to go back and review and add one thing to this now that we've seen this. Making comics is about showing change from one panel to the next by figuring out how much time passes and not boring the reader and being clear. So now I'm going to give you an exercise that you can do using this idea to start making comics, hopefully just as easily as if you had one of my finish this comic pages in front of you. So what we're going to do is take our 2-panel comic that I said was a little bit flawed and work on making it better. So here's our character. Sad, happy, right? Remember I said we didn't know how much time has passed. We don't know what has happened to cause this change. It's not clear. It's not really boring because it's kind of interesting to see someone go from sad to happy. So it's not boring, but it's not clear. We have no idea why any of this is happening, who this person is. So what I do is I make a 2-panel comic that has some sort of change, right? So I can cross that off my list, right? Change, boom. Clear, is it clear? Does it make sense? Not really. Is it boring? Is it not boring? I'm good at that. So I need to make this clear. So how can I do that? Well, I can add some panels. So here's what I might do. Instead of this being the first panel and this being the second panel, I'm going to make that the first and this the third and add a panel in here. So what might make a character go from sad to happy? Well, something that usually makes me go from sad to happy is food, and often good food, like some ice cream. So maybe I draw some ice cream. That is a more complete, understandable, clear comic. Once upon a time, there was a kid that was sad. He got ice cream. He was suddenly happy. I can stop there and redraw this as a 3-panel comic. Boom. That's a complete comic. Or I can make this the second panel, the third panel, the fourth panel, and build on my story. Why did this character start this comic sad? Well, maybe they were supposed to go to their friend's house and for a birthday party outside to play soccer. I don't know. And when they woke up, they looked out the window and saw that it was raining and storming outside. Thunder, lightning, rain, and that made them sad. But then they had ice cream and then they were happy. Can I keep going even further? Maybe this kid is happy with his ice cream, but then I introduce another character. Maybe I introduce a cat, and not just any cat, but a mean cat. Then maybe I have a sound effect. Swipe. And then maybe I have my cat. Now the cat's got the ice cream cone. And our character is once again sad. So that's an exercise I do by myself all the time to sort of practice making comics and figure out how to make comics, and also make sure that each panel, each drawing I do is connected to the next one in a way that makes sense, is clear, is not boring, and is engaging. And that's how you can build comics. And I would encourage you to start small. Start with 2 panels, 3 panels, maybe build a bigger comic like this. A lot of kids sit down and try to write a huge graphic novel, but it can be incredibly hard to start and jump like that. It's like if you've never climbed a mountain before, to go and try to climb Mount Everest. Starting small like this and working your way up is a great way to get engaged and to write more. And there's nothing to say that starting here with 2 panels and building out like this could turn into a graphic novel, right? This could turn into a huge graphic novel about this boy or versus this cat, like a Tom and Jerry, or like a spy versus spy, one against the other, stealing the ice cream and playing tricks on each other. This could turn into a whole graphic novel. But if you start smaller and then build it piece by piece, it's going to be so much easier. You're going to learn so much more, and you're going to get so much further. So don't try to sit down and write, an entire graphic novel, because I think that's going to lead to frustration and not a great deal of learning. And that's what you're going to want. So that's a bit about me and my approach, and we can do Q&A now. And I guess I'll leave this up just in case someone asks me a question where it makes sense for me to do some.
Oh, Jarrett, listen, I hope you guys feel the way I do. I bet you do. I just learned so much, and I love the sandbox analogy and the starting small. I think that's awesome advice. We have so many great questions that these students have thought of, and I'm just going to give you as many as I can. Some of them are similar. We had a couple submitted early from Murray Middle, and Lydia wants to know if you've ever made any action or mystery comics. And Jackson asked what your inspiration was for your books.
Yeah, so action and mystery, I think I try to include an element of action and mystery in all of my books. I think there's some sort of mystery at every book. I think that helps keep you turning the pages. Whether the mystery is a traditional mystery, like someone solved a crime, that you can include mystery without having like that sort of traditional mystery. It can just be the mystery of what a character is going to do, or how something is going to turn out, or who's going to win if it's a sort of like game or something. And I also try to incorporate action a lot. In terms of my Hunger Heroes books, which are my graphic novels, there's a lot of action and mystery in those, especially mystery in the second one. There's a great deal of mystery. And also some action. What inspires me to make books? Honestly, a huge part of it is other people's books. I'm a huge reader, and I think you have to be a big reader if you want to be a writer, and you have to be a looker if you want to be a drawer. You have to look at other people's drawings and pictures and learn from them and be inspired by them. So I will read an amazing book by someone, and it fires me up almost like nothing else to say, it makes me want to create and say, wow, what if I had a story with that sort of character? How would it turn out? Or what if I had a story in a similar sort of setting? Or what if I tried to do this with my story? It's like if you play a sport. Sometimes if you're watching someone else play your sport, the sport you love, you have that like itch, that urge, you get filled with that energy and you want to go be doing it yourself. Or maybe you play an instrument and you're listening to music. And as soon as you start listening to someone else play that instrument or a song you love, you can't wait to get your hands on your instrument and start playing it too. I get that when I read. And that is often what will inspire me and drive me to create more, is just falling in love with other people's work.
Well, a lot of the students have asked these questions, so I want to give you these for sure in our last couple minutes. If you can answer it that quickly. When and how did you learn to draw? When did you become interested in it? Kind of a general, how did you become what you are now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that drawing is something we are all interested in and that we all love to do, and we do it. It's one of the first things we do. As soon as our parents are brave enough to let us get a crayon or a marker in our hands and let us have a go at something, we want to draw. It's how we express ourselves. It's amazingly fun and interesting and enjoyable and satisfying to make marks. And I think we all have the urge to do that. And at some point in our lives and in our education system, not to get too up on a soapbox, we stop valuing the visual language and we stop valuing visual expression. And it's a shame because I think drawing and making marks is just such a healthy and enjoyable and cathartic thing for people. So I've been interested in drawing a long time. I never really knew that it could be a career because I never had an author or an illustrator visit as a kid. But I sort of taught myself how to draw by looking, by studying, and by using things that I know how to draw. So if you look at my sheet again, my paper, I will tell you that the only things that I know how to draw are shapes, lines, and letters. And if you use my activity books, you'll see this technique played out on each how to draw page, or if you look at my website. So I think that all of you can probably draw your shapes, right? You can draw straight lines, wiggly lines, zigzags, curved lines, dotted lines, and letters. We often don't think of letters as drawing, but if you think back to when you first learned your letters or you're learning them now, you didn't write them so much as you carefully, line by line, drew them, right? You took it one step at a time. 1, 2, 3. And the more fluent you got, the more you mastered that pattern, the more you thought of this as writing, but it's really drawing. This is the drawing process in a nutshell. And so when I try to draw something, I build it on the page out of shapes and lines and letters. And I don't ever get it right on the first try, but the more I work on it, the more I master that pattern, the better my drawing gets. Like my 4-year-old right now draws A's like this. And it can be hard to tell that that's an A. It looks sort of like a off-kilter triangle, but we're practicing. And the more she practices, the more I can see that that's an A. And the goal of drawing, it's not about making something look good or bad. It's about communicating something. And so she's communicating A to me. The better she gets at it, the more she practices. So if I want to draw something for you and make you all think the thing I want you to think, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you what I'm drawing. I'm just going to narrate it for you. I'm going to draw a rectangle, then 2 parallel lines, and then a square, and then a letter V, and then a letter M, and then a colored in triangle, and then some more lines, and then some more lines. So hopefully you can tell that that's a pencil, right? If that's a pencil, then this has done an effective job. But hopefully you saw that I only drew a rectangle, a square, letter V, letter M, a triangle, right? That's all I did. I didn't draw a pencil. I just drew shapes, lines, and letters. Now, if I want to do something more complicated, it might be a little bit trickier and it might take me a lot more tries and a lot more work. Like, let's say I want to draw not just a pencil, but a tired pencil. Well, there's a rectangle, there's a square, here's a couple parallel lines, here's my letter V, here's my letter M, here's my colored in triangle, here's my lines for the metal part. Maybe I'll do 2 circles for eyes. Maybe I'll put some lines here. Maybe I'll put some little droplets for sweat and a big sort of like half circle bean shape. Maybe I'll even make some sound effects, pant, pant. So now this isn't just communicating pencil, this is communicating tired pencil. Just like those lines I drew communicated the letter A, or just like these lines communicate the word and. That's all drawing is. And that's how I do it, and that's how I approach it. And I didn't go to school for this, for any of this. I taught myself this by looking and by sitting here at a desk like this and practicing for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and drawing a bajillion quote unquote bad drawings that weren't bad. They were just not good at doing their job. They weren't communicating effectively. And so I hope you, after this, are encouraged to sit down and make a lot of quote unquote bad drawings, because only when you make a drawing that doesn't do what you want it to do, can you start looking at it and figuring out what you need to change to make it do what you want it to do. So yeah, that's my approach to drawing in a nutshell.
Well, Jarrett, I think I can speak on behalf of everybody and say I have learned so much. I am so excited to go get my Sharpie and make a bunch of bad drawings.
Yes.
With just shapes and lines and letters. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you all, classes and friends, homeschool friends. We're so glad you were able to join us today. Please reach out to us on Twitter or Jarrett on Twitter. Ask some additional questions. I know we didn't get to them all today. I can say for me, this just wasn't long enough. I've enjoyed it so much. But thank you all for joining us. Know that there are some more author sessions coming up, and I've dropped that link in the chat. You're welcome to register for some additional author visits. I know this one has just been absolutely fabulous, and we thank you for joining us. Be sure to check your email. We will have those winners of Jarrett's books announced via email right after the session. So thank you all so much
for having me. This was great. Enjoy the rest of the sessions. It's an amazing lineup you guys have put together.
Thank you. You've got them ready to do their comics and graphic novel work. So we're ready to see it. Thank you so much.
Have fun. See you all later.